Barakatah YAHAWAH, BaHa YAHAWASHI, BaHa RAWCHAA QADASH. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is There is Neither Jew nor Greek. And pretty much that comes from the book of Galatians, the 3rd chapter, which we'll read real quick. Galatians 3, and I'll just go straight to the point. And 28, there is neither Jew nor Greek. Now this has been one of many, but one of the top scriptures that has been misconstrued, a very controversial scripture, that is broken down wrong by these wacky-tacky Christians time and time again. And no matter how many times you go back and break it down correctly, they still break it down wrong. Because at the end of the day, they're trying to fit, their mind it doesn't comprehend. They're trying to fit all people into this contract, right? But it doesn't register in their mind that this is only dealing with two nations, Jew and Greek. It's not dealing with the whole world. So why is it written like that? There's no difference, or there's neither Jew nor Greek. The reason why is because they're both Israelites. And in order to understand that, first and foremost, Yahawah B'Shem YAHAWASHI, through the Holy Spirit, RAWCHAA QADASH, has to open up your mind to see it. And you have to have the understanding and know the history of what took place back here for these things to be written. Because the reason why the Apostle Paul said that was because the Jews in Jerusalem looked down upon the Israelites that were scattered among the nations that were calling themselves Greeks. Now, what you're looking at here is this is a map of the Hellenistic world, right? 300 BC, because Alexander the Great, or the Greek, conquered the known world around 333 BC, if I'm not mistaken. On the date, it varies a year or two here and there. So by this time, around 300 BC, the world had been Hellenized. All right, and what you're looking at here this is the Seleucid Empire, right? And this is all of the regions that they had conquered. And if you look in this area here, this is Syria. This is a part of Turkey, which used to be called Anatolia. And Anatolia or Turkey stems from this region here over into the regions of Macedonia in here. So I don't really know all of the particulars on the borders of Turkey, because it does stem across here into this region here, So this lets you know the reason why the Apostle Paul was all up in these regions here, teaching these Greeks, which were Israelite foreigners. And then you see that it stems down into the interiors of so-called Africa. You have the northern parts of Africa. Then you have Egypt and all these regions here, because Alexander conquered Egypt and named a city after him. It's called Alexandria, Egypt, which was named after Alexander, the Macedonian. And then from that point, when he died, he parted his kingdom amongst 4 of his main generals, because he had more generals. But he parted mainly among 4 of them. You had Cassander, Lysimachus, Seleucus, and then you had Ptolemy. And the Ptolemy, the Ptolemy, which later became known as the Ptolemaic Empire, took over the regions of Egypt. And that's why at a certain point around this period, 300 BC to about 25 BC, that's why you see the pharaohs and their images looking like so-called white people, because they were actually so-called white people that had conquered this region at this time period. Now today you see so-called Arab-looking people, because they conquered that during the time of, when the Arabs, were conquering the known world. And pretty much what has happened is, through all the different empires, all of these regions here had just been conquered and transferred to each empire that ruled. So building on the word Hellenistic, right, or Hellenistic world, there's a term called Hellenistic Judaism. But before we go to that, let's go to, just bear with me real quick. I thought I had pulled it up. Let's go to the term, before we go to, let's go to the term Hellenization. Hellenization, or Hellenism, is the adoption of Greek culture, religion, language, and identity by non-Greeks. All right. In the ancient period, colonization often led to the Hellenization of indigenous peoples. In the Hellenistic period, many of the territories which were conquered by Alexander the Great were Hellenized. Under the Eastern Roman Byzantine Empire, much of its territory was Hellenized. And in modern times, Greek culture has prevailed over minority cultures in modern Greece. So pretty much that's what happened. They pretty much colonized these regions, and in certain cases, or most cases, they made them to take on the customs of the Greeks, especially through the Seleucid line of an individual named Antiochus Epiphanes IV. All right, I'm just trying to see if there's anything else here. If it comes back to it, we'll read a little bit more. But that was the main point we wanted to get out of there. So we have to go to the Hellenistic Judaism, so-called Judaism, because what happened was, during the time of Antiochus Epiphanes, what you could do research on him, what he did was he conquered Israel, conquered Jerusalem, and put a stop to the so-called quote-unquote religion of the Jews. They weren't able to sacrifice. They weren't able to keep the Sabbath. They weren't able to circumcise their children. They weren't able to keep feast days, which are the high holy days. They were forced to eat pork. They were forced to worship, the abomination that maketh desolate in when you read through the book of Maccabees, they did set that up. When you read the book of Daniel 9, it speaks about the abomination of desolation, but that pretty much took place, during the time of 70 AD, when the Romans came in, which they're the same people, Roman Edomites, Greek Edomites, same thing. So let's read a little bit of this. Hellenistic Judaism was a form of Judaism in classical antiquity that combined Jewish religious tradition with elements of Greek culture. And this is what happened. And in this time period that this happened, you had those that kept the integrity of their laws, statutes, and commandments. They still continue to call themselves Jews. And then you had those that were not able to call themselves Jews because that was something that was forbidden at the threat of death. 2 Maccabees 6:6, it says, neither was it lawful for a man to keep Sabbath days or ancient feasts, or to profess himself at all to be a Jew. So if he couldn't call himself a Jew, and he was conquered by the Greeks, what did he have to call himself? A Greek. Hence the term Galatians 3:28, there is neither Jew nor Greek, because they're both Israelites. And it goes into more, it goes in deeper than that, because you had the Jews that were Greek-speaking Jews, which was known as the Hellenistas or the Helleniste. And then you had those Jews that didn't follow the customs anymore, didn't call themselves Jews anymore, didn't do anything of any of the religious rites of Israel, and they called themselves Greeks. That's where you have the term Hellen or Hellene. So going back, it says, It says, until the fall of the Western Roman Empire and early Muslim conquest of the Eastern Mediterranean, the main centers of Hellenistic Judaism were Alexandria in Egypt and Antioch in Syria, now in southern Turkey. All right. And this is why you have you had a big community of Israelites in Alexandria, Egypt, known as the Alexandrian Jews, which is where you get this term here. Let's first go to the first verse, Acts 6:1. And in those days, when the number of the disciples was multiplied, there arose a murmuring of the Grecians, because they were being called Grecians by who? By the Jews. Just like they were calling the other Israelites that were totally gone, they were calling them heathens, uncircumcised. But these Grecians were circumcised because they knew they were Jews. They kept the customs of the Jews, but it's just that they spoke the tongue of the Greeks. So there arose a murmuring of the Grecians against the Hebrews, the Jews that spoke Hebrew, because their widows were neglected in the daily ministration. Now, when we look up this word Grecian, right, the word Grecians is Hellenistes, right? And it's a derivative or from the root word Helen, right? So now when we go down here, it says a Hellenist, one who imitates the manners and customs or the worship of the Greeks and use the Greek tongue. Used in the New Testament of Jews born in foreign lands and speaking Greek. So this is the main one here. This one here, this really should be under Helen, because these were the Israelites that fell away and couldn't call themselves Jews, and didn't keep the Sabbath, didn't circumcise their children, so on and so forth. All right, it's just a matter of understanding. So these Greek-speaking Jews were murmuring against the Hebrew-speaking Jews because their widows were being neglected. And when we jump down to the 9th verse, or should I say 8th, and Stephen, full of faith and power, did great wonders and miracles among the people. Then there arose certain of the synagogue, which is called the synagogue of the Libertines, because I believe that was Pompey that liberated these Israelites, and that's why they were called Libertines, which means pretty much loosely translated as free. It says, and Cyrenians and Alexandrians, and of them of Cilicia and of Asia, disputing with Stephen. So you had all types of Israelites scattered all throughout these regions. As the brother earlier put, Michaela, he put, Asia Minor, which they call it Asia Minor. Today they call it Turkey. Back then they call it Byzantium, but it was also called, well, actually Byzantium was the capital, but it was called Anatolia. All right, this region here was called Anatolia. So you had Israelites scattered all throughout these regions. You had the Jews that knew they were Jews, that were speaking the Hebrew language. You had the Jews that knew they were Jews, that were speaking the Greek language. And you had the Israelites that didn't know that they were Israelites, scattered among here, speaking the Greek language. And these were the main ones that the Apostle Paul was going to visit and to look after. So going back, let's see what else we could glean off of this. It says, excuse me, the two main Greek urban settlements of the Middle East and North Africa region, both found at the end of the 4th century BCE in the wake of the conquest of Alexander the Great. Hellenistic Judaism also existed in Jerusalem during the Second Temple period, where there was conflict between Hellenizers and traditionalists. All right, and you can read about that. I believe that's in the book of Ezra. All right, so it spoke about here what? North Africa. Now, this map doesn't really go into it. Let's see if we could find a map. Let's see. Let's see what else. Just bear with me while I find this map. I didn't think to grab it earlier, so that's a good one, but it doesn't have, man, if it only had this here. Let's see. Man, this, I know there's got to be another one a little bit better. Just bear with me. Let me just try one more thing. Then this one is perfect, but let me check this one here. Okay, this one will do. Try to get those real simple maps to look at. So let's look at that again. So it says that the two main Greek urban settlements of the Middle East and North Africa region. All right. So let's go back to Acts. Let's read verse 9 again. Then there arose certain of the synagogue, which is called the synagogue of the Libertines, and Cyrenians and Alexandrians, and of them of Cilicia and of Asia, disputing with Stephen. So we're looking at the map here, and we have what? We have Cyrene, which is where? In North Africa, because you have Libya here. You have Egypt here, and you have what? Alexandria. So you have Jews of Cyrene. You have Alexandrian Jews. You know, then you had Israelites that were here on the island of Crete. You know, even the Apostle Paul that told Titus that the Cretians are slow belly. You know, they had a bad name, certain ones of them. Then you have Cyprus here, which you had a lot of Israelites here. They call them Cypriot Jews. These are the Cypriot Jews that were dwelling on this land here. Or should I say this island here. So you had Israelites that were scattered all throughout this region. And when we read the book of Acts, the second chapter, we read Acts 2nd chapter, verse 5. It says, and there were dwelling at Jerusalem Jews, devout men out of every nation under heaven. So there were Israelites in Jerusalem because it was, you know, around the time of the feasts. The main two feasts at this time was the Feast of Passover, or the Feast of Unleavened Bread, you know, which is the Feast of Unleavened Bread, you know, the Passover being the first night. And then you had the Feast of First Fruits, which is known as the Pentecost, or 50 days. So there were devout men, there were Jews, devout men out of every nation under heaven, because they would come 3 times a year as per the law. When you go down here to the 9th verse, or actually the 8th verse, before that, the disciples, once the Holy Spirit hit them, they started speaking in different languages. And they were like, wait a minute, ain't these men Galileans? They had the Galilean tongue, which you had Hebrew, but you had different dialects, you know, among Jake. You know, you had the upper crust and you had the lower crust, the commoners. During the time of when the Assyrians were coming to conquer Israel, or trying to conquer Judah, you know, there was a situation where, you know, the Assyrian rulers, you know, or the Assyrian captains, I guess you could say, for lack of better words, they were speaking in the Lashon QADASH, you know, to the leaders, you know, of Israel back then, that was sent there for them to talk about this whole situation, you know, of them conquering them. And then the upper crust, or the higher ups in Israel, they said, look, speak to us in the, you know, in the Syrian language, in the Aramean, because we understand it. Because the common people didn't speak Aramean. The common people spoke the Hebrew, the Lashon QADASH, but the Aramean was something more of the language of the studied, you know, of the learned. You know, when you go back and you read the story, they said, look, speak to us in the Aramaic language because we understand it. And he said, no, we're going to speak to you in the Hebrew because this word is for you and for all of Israel, for everybody. All right. So there were different dialects. Right. So it says, verse 8, and how hear we every man in our own tongue wherein we were born. Then it goes on to say what? Parthians and Medes and Elamites, because all in these different regions, you had Israelites coming from all over these regions. You know, it says, and dwellers in Mesopotamia. That's over there. Most of these lands here are over there towards, you know, Babylon, you know, the Euphrates River, the Tigris River, in that region there. You know, you had the Elamites, you know, it's Iran and the so-called East Indians, and in Judea and Cappadocia, in Pontus and Asia. You had Israelites everywhere because the curse said that we would be scattered abroad. Phrygia and Pamphylia. Then it says what? In Egypt, because you had the Alexandrian Jews, right? And in parts of Libya, we saw on the map, you know, you have here Libya, right? You said Egypt, right? It says in Egypt and in parts of Libya about Cyrene. And here goes Cyrene up in the northern parts of Africa. And then you have the Alexandrian Jews. So Israel was all throughout this region. This is why whenever, you know, there was something going down, Jake would what? Flee down into Egypt to mingle among the rest of the Israelites that were down in this area. Right? Then you have the man that helped YAHAWASHI carry the cross, you know, Simon of Cyrene. He was one of the Israelites that was from this region that happened to be in the land of Jerusalem at that time, keeping the Passover. Just like you had the Ethiopian eunuch, which was an actual Israelite that was over, you know, the treasures and the affairs of the queen of Ethiopia at that time. You see, so you had Jakes coming from all walks of life, being called by the citizenship that they had. Because the Apostle Paul, didn't he call himself a Roman? He had Roman citizenship, Salakia. You know? So you had Jakes coming from all walks of life. They were calling themselves Alexandrians. They were calling themselves Libyans, Cyrenians, you know, Cretians, you know, the Cypriots, or from Cyprus. They were calling themselves Elamites. And they were calling themselves from the different regions. But they knew they were Jews. But then you had the others that didn't know. So going back, matter of fact, you could read on over here. And it says, and Alexandrians. I'm sorry. Verse 2, it says, and in the parts of Libya about Cyrene, and strangers of Rome, because they were not actual, you know, Romans. They were strangers in Rome. So it says Jews and proselytes. Jews and proselytes. Right? Cretes and Arabians. See? Cretes, which is the island of Crete. As you see right here, this is the island of Crete. And you read the book of Titus, the first chapter, it speaks about the Cretians. Right? It says, and Arabians, because you had Israelites among those Arabs. It says, we do hear them speak in our tongues, the wonderful works of the Most High. So going back to this, let's see, Second Temple, Holistic Culture, Septuagint, Hebrew Bible. You could read more of this if you want. What I want to do is I just want to jump down to some of these. Let's go to Hellenism. It says the conquest of Alexander in the late 4th century BCE spread Greek influence and colonization, a process of cultural change called Hellenization, which we see there is the adoption of Greek culture, which we're reading here, over non-Greek lands, including the Levant. And that was that whole region, you know, where Jake was at. You know, you had Syria, all that whole region there. This gave rise to the Hellenistic period, which sought to create a common or universal culture in the Alexandrian Empire based on that of 5th century Athens, along with a fusion of Near Eastern cultures. That's why eventually when that devil Antiochus Epiphanes came into power, he said what? That all these nations should leave the laws of their power or of their God and follow the laws of the Greeks. And that was an actual law that was enacted or written into law. It was a letter. The period is characterized by a new wave of Greek colonization and established Greek cities and kingdoms in Asia and Africa. Right, they have something, trying to remember the, I think it's called, let me see, it's called MENA, MENA, MENA. Now, MENA is an acronym, Middle East, North Africa, and that was for, I believe that was for either for Jake or just for those regions. I got to go back and research that again. The most famous being Alexandria in Egypt. New cities were established composed of colonists who came from different parts of the Greek world and not from a specific metropolis, mother city, as before. These Jews living in countries west of the Levant formed the Hellenistic diaspora. Right. So you had those that knew that they were Jews that maintained their nationality and their laws and their cultures, but they just spoke the Greek language because they happened to be among these people and they were conquered. It says, but then you had those that were, were brought in or amalgamated into the Greek Empire, because some maintained their integrity and still called themselves Jews, and others they didn't. You can read about that in the book of First Maccabees, the first chapter, and others. And other chapters. The Egyptian diaspora is the most well-known of these. It witnessed close ties, indeed the firm economic integration of Judea with the Ptolemaic kingdom ruled from Alexandria. That's where you had something called the Alexandrian Jews, which we read about here in Acts 6 and 9. Then there arose certain of the synagogue, which is called the synagogue of the Libertines. Now let's look up this word Libertines. It was an actual synagogue in this region, Libertines, Libertinos, right? One who has been liberated from slavery, a freedman or the son of a freedman. Libertine denotes Jews, according to Philo, who had been made captives of the Romans under Pompey, but were afterwards set free, and who, although they had fixed their abode in Rome, strangers in Rome, had built at their own expense a synagogue at Jerusalem, which they frequented when in that city. The name Libertines adhered to them to distinguish them from free-born Jews. Yeah, because you had a whole Pharisees, Sadducees, lawyers, scribes, Alexandrian Jews, Cypriot Jews. You had those that, going back to the Hellenistic period, was calling themselves Antiochians, which were Jakes. You had, during the time of the Roman Empire, you had those that were calling themselves Herodians. The Sicarii, the Zealots. So you had Jake that was calling himself by different factions, but they were all Israelites, who had subsequently taken up their residence at Rome. Evidence seems to have been discovered of the existence of a synagogue of the Libertines at Pompeii. All right. So going back, so there was a synagogue of the Libertines and what? Cyrenians. We go to the word Cyrenians. Kurenaios, a native of Cyrene. And we showed you here that Cyrene is here, this island right here, Crete. All right, going back. Then we have Alexandrians, Alexandrios, a native or resident of Alexandria in Egypt. Right, they weren't actually Egyptians. They weren't actually anything else but Israelites whose homeland was Alexandria. They had Alexandrian or Egyptian citizenship. And that, you could, even though that's dealing with, in these times now, you have Isaiah the 19th chapter, which speaks about, Israelites pretty much being called Egyptians, Assyrians, but they were not actually Egyptians or Assyrians. And that's the big mystery of the Gentiles. This is why the Apostle Paul spoke about that. I believe that's Colossians, the first chapter. We could start at the 24th verse. Who now rejoice in my sufferings for you, and fill up that which is behind of the afflictions of Yahawashi in my flesh for his body's sake, which is the church, whereof I am made a minister according to the dispensation of the Most High, which is given to me for you to fulfill the word of the Most High. Yeah, because the Apostle Paul was given a certain portion of the Spirit, which was a great portion. Even the mystery which hath been hid from ages and from generations. Why? Because it's a mystery what this is speaking about. And the mystery is not given to all for all to understand. It's only given to the elect to understand this knowledge, this truth. That's why it's called the mystery. But now is made manifest to his what? To his saints. Who are his saints? The Israelites. It says, to whom the Most High would make known what is the riches of the glory of this mystery among the Gentiles, the Israelite foreigners, which you're reading about, and we're reading of the reason why they were brought into that, status, and the difference between a Hellenistas or a Greek-speaking Jew and a Hellen, which was an Israelite that lost everything and was speaking the Greek language. There's a whole vast history on it, which is Yahawashi in you, the hope of the Most High, whom we preach, warning every man and teaching every man in all wisdom, that we may present every man perfect in Yahawashi HaMashiach. Whereunto because the Lord is not accepting anything less than the best, perfection. All right, whereunto I also labor, striving according to his working, which worketh in me mightily. So going back to, let me see, we went to Alexandrians. What else is there here? And them of Cilicia. Let's go to Cilicia. It's Cilicia, the land of Celix, a maritime province in the southeast of Asia Minor, bordering on Pamphylia in the west, Laconia and Cappadocia in the north, and Syria in the east. Its capital, Tarsus, was the birthplace of Paul. See? That's why I said he's a citizen of no mean city. All right. And Lycaonia, I forget if this is the place. It might have been Athens, though. I remember Lycaonia being I think that was one of the cities where they try to worship the Apostle Paul. Yeah. Acts 14 and 11. And when the people saw that Paul had what Paul had done, they lifted up their voices, saying in the speech of Lycaonia, the gods are come down to us in the likeness of men. Yeah, and that's when they were about to sacrifice to them as being gods. You see? So you had Jake all over the place. Come on, man. You had Israelites all over the place. And they're letting you know that this is talking about Israelites. Cilicia, that was, all that region there. And of Asia, disputing with Stephen. All right. So now let's go back. Let's see what else we could glean off of this. And the friendly relations which existed between the royal court and the leaders of the Jewish community. This was a diaspora of choice, not of imposition. Right. But then when Antiochus Epiphanes came into power, it was an actual imposition. It was, under the threat of death, you had to comply to the Greek ways. Information is less robust regarding diaspora in other territories. It suggests that the situation was by and large the same as it was in Egypt, which it was, because the Lord said he would scatter us among all nations. Jewish life in both Judea and the diaspora was influenced by the culture and language of Hellenism, which is what? Greek. The Greeks viewed Jewish culture favorably, while Hellenism gained adherents among the Jews. While Hellenism has sometimes been presented under the influence of Second Maccabees, itself notably a work in Koine Greek, as a threat of assimilation diametrically opposed to Jewish tradition. And that's exactly what happened. Adaptation to Hellenic culture did not require compromise of Jewish precepts or conscience. And pretty sure in some cases it didn't. Because the Alexander the Greek didn't push that upon us, you know. But when you come down to Antiochus Epiphanes, that's when it actually was imposed on Jake. When the Greek gymnasium was introduced into Jerusalem, it was installed by a Jewish high priest. Yeah, but this Jewish high priest was wicked. You know, but see how the devil, like, he'll throw stuff in there. Yeah, you know, they set up a place of exercise. You know, so it wasn't really an imposition. No, he did it because he was trying to please those Greek rulers, Antiochus Epiphanes. You could read about it. It was either Simon or Menelaus or one of those. You know, which Lord's will. Matter of fact, let's just grab that on deck. Matter of fact, it's actually two chapters back. Which Elder Pastor brought this out at the camp Saturday, you know, which, you know, we've gone over this, but it's so far and few in between, you know, that this scripture pretty much went under the radar for a long time because we mainly use First Maccabees, the 1st chapter, and Second Maccabees, the 6th chapter. All right, so let's see. Let me see where we could start on this. To the king, Lucius. 150 more. I guess we could start here, but let's before we go to this, let's go back. I said, and other priests soon engaged in wrestling matches in the Palestra. Yeah, because it said that when you read that same chapter, 2 Maccabees 4, it said that some of the priests, you know, they were pretty much they gave up their priestly duties because that whole Hellenistic thing and the game of discus and that whole, you know, working out, and, you know, it appealed, and it was the thing that it was more appealing to certain Jakes than keeping the law, statutes, and commandments of the Lord, and to perform their office for the Lord. It tells you that they were pretty much enticed, you know, to do those things. It says they plainly did not reckon such activities as undermining their priestly duties. No, they left their priestly duties. See, whoever wrote this, but Eric S. Gruen, whoever the hell this is, yeah, this is a devil. This is a devil that writes this, and it seems like, oh, this is, damn, well, you know, it wasn't that bad. No, it was bad. But they paint it as it's not. When we go to 2 Maccabees 4 and 7, but after the death of Seleucus, when Antiochus called Epiphanes, this is when that whole shit went down. This is why we have something called Hanukkah, which YAHAWASHI celebrated Hanukkah. You know? This is why we have something called Hanukkah, the Feast of Lights, the Feast of Dedication. Why? Because Antiochus Epiphanes destroyed the temple, and then the Maccabees reinstated it and rededicated it and cleaned it up. That's what this Feast of Hanukkah is all about, the Feast of Lights, in commemoration to, you know, what the heathens had done, and the Lord allowing us to restore back, you know, the temple. So it says, took the kingdom. Jason, the brother of Onias, labored underhand to be high priest. See, you had Jason underhandedly. And what did they do? They were bidding for the priesthood. You know, they were offering more money and talents of gold and silver to the present ruler in order for them to receive the office of the priesthood, promising unto the king by intercession 360 talents of silver, and another revenue 80 talents. Besides this, he promised to assign 150 more if he might have license to set up a place for exercise. And when we read First Maccabees, the 1st chapter, this place of exercise was set up by those that were forsaking the covenant of the Lord. They even made themselves uncircumcised. Salakia. All right. All right, let's go there. Let's go to 1 Maccabees, the 1st chapter, and the 11th verse. And in those days went there out of Israel what? Wicked men, who persuaded many, saying, let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us. For since we departed from them, we have had much sorrows. So what was this devil doing here, Jason? He was bidding for the priesthood, and he was, appealing to Antiochus Epiphanes and giving him stuff and doing things after the custom of the Greeks, so that Antiochus Epiphanes can give him the priesthood. That's what he was doing. But you read this from this devil, he make it seem like everything was cool. They were setting up, gymnasiums and all that. It was nothing, nothing to it. There was no imposition, nothing like that. So what happened then? Why did we celebrate Hanukkah? Why did Antiochus Epiphanes destroy, the temple? Why did he have Jupiter Olympius in the temple? Why were there a sacrifice of swine? Why were they dallying with prostitutes in the temple, in the court? Fuck out of here, man. So it says, so this device pleased them well. Then certain of the people were so forward hearing that they went to the king, who gave them license to do after the ordinances of the heathen. Whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem according to the custom of the heathen, and made themselves what? Uncircumcised. This went two ways. It was physical and it was spiritual. That's why you had the Jews in Jerusalem that were known as the circumcision, calling the Jews outside of Jerusalem that forsook the covenant, that followed the customs of the Greeks, they called them uncircumcision. Because you have a term called epispasm, which I remember the first time the brother Quanawat from the New York camp sent me this terminology. Epispasm is circumcision in reverse. Any uncircumcised male who is not circumcised on the flesh of his foreskin shall be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant, so said the Most High to Abraham, establishing the covenant of circumcision, a covenant between me and you and your descendants after you. And this is found in Genesis 17. For centuries, Jewish boys have regularly been circumcised when they are 8 days old, Israelite boys. Genesis 17:12. And an unusual challenge to the circumcision developed, however, in the Hellenistic period. After about 133 BCE, Hellenistic and Roman societies widely practiced public nakedness, because that's what the word gym or gymnasium means. It means naked. But they abhorred bearing the tip of the penis, called the glans. So it says to expose the glans was considered vulgarly humorous, indecent, or both. And these devils got a nerve to call something indecent. Here it is, you're exercising butt naked. But then you saying that if you have the foreskin on your penis, off your penis, that's vulgar, or should I say, vulgarly humorous, which is not vulgar. Vulgar just simply means, to be in public, but it's they looked at it as indecent, as the audacity of them to cut the turtleneck off of their joint. This combination of attitude could be and often was devastating for circumcised Jews enjoying oneself in a Greek gymnasium or Roman bath, where nudity was de rigueur, was a popular and stylish pastime. Here, politics was discussed and business deals concluded, blah, 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 blah. Consequently, for hundreds of years, some Jews underwent a surgical procedure known as epispasm, an operation that corrected. Here it is, the Most High, he made a mistake, This is what these devils do. The Most High, he made a mistake, So since he had you cut off the turtleneck off your joint, we got a way to put it back on. All right, we're going to take a piece of that skin off your ass and we're going to slap it back on your joint. All right, so you can cover that thing. You can put that you could put that turtleneck back on, to cover it, because let me stop, man. An operation that corrected a circumcised penis. Salakia, I was having a dove moment over here. Some might call it circumcision in reverse. It says, from references and allusions to the procedure in classical and rabbinical literature, it appears that epispasm reached its peak of popularity in the 1st century CE. You can read the rest of this if you want. What I'll do is I'll copy and paste it in the in the chat. That way, if brothers want to get it and go research it later, they may. So it says, 1 Maccabees 1:15, and made themselves uncircumcised and forsook the holy covenant and joined themselves to the heathen and were sold to do mischief. And that's exactly what they did. They were sold to do mischief. So this is this phrase, this paragraph right here by this devil here. This is poppycock, horse pucky. Okay. The main religious issue dividing Hellenized Jews from traditional Jews was application of biblical laws in a Hellenistic or Roman or other non-Jewish empire. Yeah, Hellenistic rulers of Judea. Let me see what else they got here. Influence, decline of the Hellenic. Okay, that's during Christianity. Individual Hellenized Jews. And then you have this. Decline of Hellenistay, and partial conversion to Christianity, because you had the Israelites that were following these ways, that were following the Jews that spoke the Greek language, that were following. Let me rephrase that. You had the Israelites, the Hellenized Jews, which were Greek-speaking Jews that kept the laws and everything. They were under the influence of what they call the circumcision, or they were called circumcision too. They were under the authority of those that kept the laws, that spoke the Hebrew language. All right, but then some of them were converted to following YAHAWASHI. All right. It says the reason for the decline of Hellenistic Judaism are observed. It may be that it was marginalized absorbed into and became early Christianity. See the Gospel of the Hebrews. The Pauline epistles and the Acts of the Apostles report that after his initial focus on conversion of Hellenized Jews across Anatolia, which this is the ancient name of Turkey, Macedonia, Thrace, and northern Syria, without criticizing their laws and traditions, Paul the Apostle eventually preferred to evangelize communities of Greek. He didn't choose. He wanted to. He see how these devils do. He didn't prefer anything. He wanted to teach those that were Jews, that knew that they were Jews, because he figured that he would be able to convince them better because he knew the laws backwards and forwards. You see, so to evangelize communities of Greek and Macedonian proselytes and God-fearers, or Greek circles sympathetic to Judaism, the apostolic decree. This is why when you read some of this stuff, you get confused, because they paint a broad stroke as to everyone that was Greek. Anyone that was out there, the heathens that were speaking Greek, it's talking about the Israelites that were in a Gentile state of mind that were speaking Greek. All right, because the Hellenistas or Hellenistay, which were Greek-speaking Jews, they were already following the law, statutes, and commandments. The only thing is they had to be converted to following YAHAWASHI, certain ones of them. Just like the Jews that were in Jerusalem that were speaking Hebrew had to be converted to YAHAWASHI, which most of them didn't, but some of them did. A good portion of them did. To forgo circumcision made Christianity a more attractive option for interested pagans, from then rabbinic Judaism, so on and so forth. You can read more of this. I put this in the description box. So let's go. First, let's go back here to Galatians 3. And let's read Galatians 3 and 26. For ye are all the children of the Most High by faith in YAHAWASHI. The children of the Most High are who? The Israelites. So what happened here? The Israelites went away. They fell away. They became unclean. So the Lord had to clean them back up. Let's go to Psalms 106. And for some reason, the Spirit just got me going into this, into the Israelite foreigner thing, the last, 3 lessons or so, because we're in a time now where it's starting to rear its ugly head back up. You see? And the scriptures say that we are to, let me get it. I can't think of it. Let's go to 2 Corinthians 10 and 4. I'll start at 3. For though we walk in the flesh, we do not war after the flesh. For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through the Most High to the what? Pulling down of strongholds. And that's what our job is. Pulling down of strongholds. Casting down, that's the true definition of apologia or apologetics. Casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalted itself against the knowledge of the Most High. And bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of YAHAWASHI, because although the world is not going to get it, although all Israel is not going to get it, although the nations are, are coming against us, because we're telling them the truth that they're not a part of this. Eventually, every knee is going to bow to YAHAWASHI, whether they want to or not. Period. So we have to pull down strongholds, and that's what we're doing through the Spirit. Psalms 106 and 34. They did not destroy the nations concerning whom the Lord commanded them, but were mingled among the heathen and learned their works. And they served their idols, which were snare unto them. Yea, they sacrificed their sons and their daughters unto devils, and shed innocent blood, even the blood of their sons and their daughters, whom they sacrificed unto the idols of Canaan, and the land was polluted with blood. Thus were they defiled with their own works, and went to whoring after their own inventions. And this is why Jake eventually fell, because they assimilated themselves into these nations. And the Lord said that they would be a snare unto us, thorns and briars would they be unto us. And that's why the whole mystery of the Gentiles in the New Testament was the restoration, the reconciliation of those Israelites that were among these nations being brought back into the fold. But first the Lord had to gather the elect from among them. And eventually, once the kingdom is established, all Israel shall be saved anyway. Because the Lord said not one grain is going to fall to the earth. Because all Israel shall be saved, because his word banks on it. His name banks on it. Because he made that promise to Abraham and to his seed. Which that seed of the promise was Abraham, Isaac, and it rested in Jacob. Any issue that came out of the loins of Jacob, any offspring, those are all the seed of the promise that the Most High promised Abraham. Because that was the only seed that received the land of the promise. And that was a part of the contract. Go back and read the contract. Salakia. You can read more on this Psalms. The whole Psalms 106 chapter is a very good chapter. So let's go back. So Galatians 3:26. For ye are all the children of the Most High by faith in YAHAWASHI, because this is how the elect will be saved in this time. Through faith, the just shall live by faith. For as many of you as have been baptized into YAHAWASHI have put on YAHAWASHI. Why? Because there was a point where, let me see if I can find that scripture. Barakatah Yahweh Shem Al Shai. All right, let's get that. Ephesians Let's go to Ephesians chapter 4. We'll start at 14. The point is in 17. It says that we henceforth be no more children tossed to and fro and carried about with every wind of doctrine, because you have to be cemented in this thing. You have to be grounded, rooted in YAHAWASHI, not bouncing from place to place. It says, by the sleight of men and cunning craftiness, whereby they lie in wait to deceive. You see? So this is why you can't be bouncing from camp to camp. You can't be and you know, if you're not rooted, you know, you got some Israelites that watch Israelite videos. Any Israelite video that come up, no matter who they are, no matter what they teach, they watch all of the videos from all the different groups. Then they'll go and watch, you know, Roman Catholic videos. They'll go and watch, you know, Christian videos. They'll go and watch Muslim videos, and then get entangled and confused, and then they want you to unconfuse them. You know, they want you to pull them out of that confused, barbed-wired state that they're in. You know, it says, but speaking the truth in love may grow up into him in all things, which is the head, even YAHAWASHI. Yeah, because the ultimate is what? As the Apostle Paul, my little children, oh, how I am pained until YAHAWASHI be formed in you. See? After the image of YAHAWASHI is in you, magnified in you, grown in you, now you can take root. Now you're taking root. Now you no longer have to be held like a baby and rock back and forth, you know, pat on the back so you could burp, put the bottle in your mouth. Because now YAHAWASHI himself is working with you to where you're able to discern certain things. You know, and this is a constant learning thing. We never stop learning. From whom the whole body fitly joined together and compacted by that which every joint supplieth, according to the effectual working in the measure of every part, maketh increase of the body unto the edifying of itself in love. So pretty much this is using the mechanism of the body and the different functions of the different parts of the body, whether it's the eye, whether it's the ear, whether it's the mouth, whether it's the teeth, whether it's the stomach, whether it's the heart, you know, the lungs, you know, the spleen, the liver, you know, the gallbladder, the pancreas, the kidneys, the legs, the toes, the knees, the kneecaps. Everything has a purpose, and everything has to work together in unity. That's how the Israelites, when they come into this thing, everybody speaking the same thing, works together like a well-oiled machine. Then it says, this I say therefore and testify in the Lord, that ye henceforth walk no more as other Gentiles walk, in the vanity of their mind. So you Israelites that were at one time being called the uncircumcision, now you're brought back to the fold. Don't walk in the vanity of your mind as you were doing before, like these other Israelite foreigners out here are doing. Having the understanding darkened, yeah, because the light of the Lord didn't shine on them, because they were not a part of the elect, even though they're Israelites. So they're going to stay in that blackened state. It says, being alienated from the life of the Most High through the ignorance that is in them. Yeah, because you have a certain amount of Israelites back then and even now, back then among the circumcision and the uncircumcision, which were all Israelites, that were not meant to get this. But then you had those among the circumcision and among the uncircumcision that were to get this because they were a part of the elect. And this is what the book of Romans 11 chapter is all about. The bringing back together of both so that all Israel can be saved. So it says because of the blindness of their heart, right? Because the Lord blinded them. Let's go real quick. What is that? Is that Isaiah 42? Just bear with me real quick. Let me see if that's it. Oh, yeah. It is. Isaiah 42:19. Who is blind but my servant, or deaf as my messenger that I sent? Who is blind as he that is perfect, and blind as the Lord's servant? So who are the Lord's servants? The Israelites. So going back, who being past feeling have given themselves over unto lasciviousness. What does it mean, being past feeling? Because the Israelite foreigners, which were being called Gentiles or heathens, they, there were certain things that they would do that proved that they were Israelites. Even though they had lost their way, they spoke the Greek language, they didn't know anything about the laws, statutes, and commandments. But there were certain things that they would do and not do that proved that they were Israelites. But it came to a point where they were so numb and so ignorant that what at one time they may say, "No, this is wrong, I can't do that." Now they no longer have that feeling anymore. They done lost that loving feeling. Romans 2:14. For when the Gentiles or the Israelite foreigners, which have not the law, do by nature the things contained in the law, these having not the law are a law unto themselves. Why? Because, they didn't have the law, but they were Israelites, and there were certain things that were still in their spirit. But some of them were so detached that feeling between right and wrong had long left. And that's what the Apostle Paul was speaking of in the book of Ephesians 4:19, who being past feeling had given themselves over unto lasciviousness to work all uncleanness with greediness. Yeah, because they were gone. Let's go real quick to the book of Jeremiah chapter 5 and 23. But this people hath a revolting and rebellious spirit. They are revolted and gone. Through. Finished. All right. So they're revolted and gone. So that's what happened with these Israelite foreigners. They were to a point where they was gone. So the ones that the Apostle Paul went to, that understood, that were being brought back, from that dark state, that's why he said this, but ye have not so learned YAHAWASHI, right? You didn't learn YAHAWASHI in the fashion that you were in before you came to the faith, before you came into the truth. If so be that you have heard him and have been taught by him, as the truth is in YAHAWASHI, that ye put off concerning the former conversation the old man. Yeah, the shit that you used to do, eating pork, speaking the Greek language. Speaking the Greek language was something that they spoke, so you can't really take that away from them. But more so following the customs of the Greeks, worshiping their idols, eating pork, eating the different abominations, committing alphabet soup, heinous, sexual depravity, if you know what I mean. Leaving all that behind and becoming a new man, which is corrupt according to the deceitful lust. Why? Because you were out there, you just were given over to that. And be renewed in the spirit of your mind, right? Because you have to start all over again. It says, and that you put on the new man, which after the Most High is created in righteousness and true holiness. Yeah. And that's what he was telling these Israelite foreigners that were up in what? In Ephesus. All right. These were Israelites. When you read the first chapter of Ephesians, let me see. Ephesians. Is it in here? Let me see. Right. Ephesians 1:1. Paul, an apostle of YAHAWASHI by the will of the Most High, to the what? To the saints which are at Ephesus, and to the faithful in YAHAWASHI. Let me see. There was something else. I thought I had another. Right here. This is Cyrene. I put this in the description box. You can read through this. It's dealing with Cyrene. It's dealing with, let's see. Yeah, it speaks about Jake and certain Jakes, certain famous Jakes in the scriptures that were from Cyrene. Pretty interesting read, But in the interest of time, we won't go through it. But see, this is why the scriptures say, get wisdom, get understand, get wisdom, get knowledge. But with all that, get wisdom, get knowledge. But with all that getting, get understanding. All right. So this has been, there is neither Jew nor Greek. And pretty much, we see Oh, matter of fact, let's read it. Galatians 3:28. There is neither Jew nor Greek, there is neither bond nor free, there is neither male nor female, for you are all one in YAHAWASHI. Why? Because they're all Israelites. And if you be in YAHAWASHI, then are you Abraham's seed, singular, and heirs according to what? The promise. You got to go back to the contract to understand what the promise is. So those that come back, those back then, those that came back from among the circumcision, and those Israelites that were being called uncircumcision that came back, those are the seed of the promise. And eventually all Israel will be saved. All right. So with that, I pray that you brothers and your few sisters have been edified. To the next time I say shalom. So like I'm fumbling and stumbling on my words, but hey, stammering lips and another tongue. Shalom.